I'm not really a preacher, I'm a teacher, and in my class, you get graded on participation. So while I can't grade you, I'm hoping that you will participate a little. So when I'm on this side, we're going to all say the word do. Do. When I'm on this side, we're all going to say the word pray. Pray. Okay, good. So, do all the good you can, in all the ways you can, to all the souls you can, in every place you can, at all the times you can, with all the zeal you can, as long as ever you can. John Wesley. Was this a Wesleyan church or something? Philippians 4:6. Do not be anxious about anything, but by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. Paul the Apostle. It is not your duty to finish the work, but neither are you free to neglect it. Rabbi Tarfon, the Mishnah, the oral Jewish tradition from the 1st century. Hebrews 4:16. Draw near to the throne of grace with confidence that we may receive mercy and find grace. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. Martin Luther King Jr. Therefore, preparing your mind for action and being sober-minded, set your hope fully on the grace that will be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. I almost got you. This is just like class. Oh, my goodness. All right. Pray for one another, for the prayer of a righteous man availeth much. James 5:16. But the one who looks into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and perseveres, being no hearer but a doer who acts, he will be blessed in his doing. James 1:23 through 25. Rejoice always, pray without ceasing. 1 Thessalonians 5:16. But someone will say, you have faith and I have works. Show me your faith apart from your works, and I will show you faith by my works. James 2:18. In Matthew 7, Jesus gives a dire warning through the parable of the sheep and the goats. When judgment comes, people will be separated. Some will say, Lord, Lord, did we not do this, that, and the other thing for you? And he will say, away from me, you evildoers, I never knew you. It's not that what they did was bad. It's just it wasn't rooted in that intimate, close relationship that was so important to God the Father that he sent his only Son to make it possible. So that prayer and that intimacy needs to root our action. Your ship has crashed, no sign of shore. To sit in your lifeboat, you can do no more. 5 days at sea, starved to the core. Lifeboat is leaking, a rip in the floor. But wait, on the horizon, land, land ho. Will you sit there and pray, or will you get up and row? Christian rock lyrics from the 1990s. The 7 sons of Sceva were a group of disciples in the book of Acts who were a little too hasty in trying to do something good. Jesus had said something about the apostles having the authority to drive demons out. So the 7 sons of Sceva said, we're going to do that. So when they tried to send out a demon, the demon said, Jesus we know, Peter and Paul we've heard of, but who are you? And the apostles were beaten up, leading to one of the greatest Christian rock band names of all time, Black Eyed Sceva. Outstanding. Jesus went into the garden to pray, and his sweat and tears were like drops of blood. Gospel accounts of Jesus in the garden, especially Luke 22:44. There has been another mass shooting again, and the nation sends thoughts and prayers again. Many times people want to do something, but they don't really know what to do. Sometimes, unfortunately, in even levels of government, to sit and pray or say you'll send thoughts and prayers is really an excuse for not taking action. At the same time, busyness and overdoing can lead to unwise decisions that can cause more harm than good. Fortunately, it does not have to be an either or. It's not either doing or prayer. We need the Marys who want to deepen their relationship through Christ, through quietness and intimacy. And we need the Marthas who want to serve Christ in a tangible way and do things. We need them both. Look at Matthew 26:41. Watch and pray. Colossians 4:2. Continue steadfastly in prayer, being watchful. Ephesians 6:18. Pray in the Spirit at all times with all kinds of prayer. To do this, you must be ready. We can look to the book of Nehemiah for a great example of action that is bathed in forethought and prayer. Check it out if you want. It's toward the end of the first half of the Old Testament, after Kings and Chronicles and before Esther, Job, and Psalms. It's the last historical book in the Old Testament. Even though Esther is historical and appears after Nehemiah in the canon, its events happen before Nehemiah. You can read the book of Malachi along with Nehemiah. They were contemporaries. Ezra and Nehemiah were, and still are in some traditions, one book that overlaps the book of 2 Chronicles. They tell the story of the return of the Israelite exiles, the rebuilding of the Holy Temple, the restoration of the Jewish community, the rededication to the law of Moses, and the reconstruction of the wall around the city of Jerusalem. Nehemiah was an administrator under the Persian king. Persia had conquered the Babylonians, who had conquered Israel, so now the Jews were dispersed in exile, their land overtaken, their temple destroyed. All of this was prophesied through the prophets about the unfaithfulness of Israel. But remember, there is hope. God had promised a return of the exiles, and it was now, in the time of Nehemiah, that was coming to pass. So here's what I like about the book of Nehemiah and the person of Nehemiah. First, he's a layperson. He's not a priest or a minister. He's an administrator, maybe a middle manager, I don't know. He's in a secular position. So lesson one, you don't have to be a minister to do ministry. You're not limited by your vocation or your position if it's secular. You can use that vocation or position to do the work of God where you are. Think of the book of Esther, chapter 4, verse 14. Who knows, but for such a time as this, you have been come to your royal position with access to the king so she could advocate for her people. Second thing I like about Nehemiah, he uses his good reputation. He was a good worker and earned a trustworthy position. The last sentence in chapter 1 tells us what it was. He was cupbearer. So he poured the drinks and tested for poison. And in that time, with all of the intrigue and conspiracies and attempts to overthrow kings, the cupbearer has to be absolutely trustworthy. And he earned that trust and respect. Doing your job well, even if it's a secular job that seems to have nothing to do with ministry, gives you the connections and the reputation that can put you in a position to be an instrument of God's will. The third thing I really like about Nehemiah, there's really nothing supernatural in the book. There's no burning bush, great wind, talking donkeys, pillars of fire, ground opening up and swallowing enemies, radiant glowing faces, holy clouds, dreams, angels, or lightning, or cheesecake from the sky. It's just an ordinary guy with a burden, a passion, who uses his reputation and the position he earned to take action and do what needed to be done. So really, it's a book about doing, and that's what I really like about it. It's about work, decisions, organization, administration, systems, planning. Nehemiah builds, plans, communicates, administrates, delegates, sets up systems and rules and roles. He follows through. He holds people accountable. When he found out that the priests couldn't do their job in the temple because they weren't getting paid, he didn't just sit and pray about it. He negotiated to get them paid. To make sure that the people had enough food, he didn't just pray. He appointed people in charge of the storerooms. When people were trespassing, he didn't just sit and pray about it. He set up guards and a rotating shift of guards to make sure there was always coverage. In fact, Nehemiah's whole mission was to rebuild the wall, not the temple. That had already been done. The wall provided protection and stability and structure, a sense of community. He didn't just pray, he built. After the wall was done, in only 52 days, by the way, he went back to his job at the palace, but often returned to follow through and hold people accountable and make sure that the things he put in place were actually working. So it's about prayer and action. As burdened, as passionate as Nehemiah was about rebuilding the wall around Jerusalem, he was careful and prayerful as he took action. Look at the very first chapter. Nehemiah gets information about the state of Jerusalem and the returning exiles. And what does he immediately do? Verse 4, he prays. Immediately. Then he acts, asking the king for permission to go rebuild the wall. Because of the reputation he earned through his work and his skills, his request is granted. And he's given supplies, helpers, and even letters that he can take with him to grant him safe passage along the way. He prays and then uses his connections to advocate and his skill to make an organized plan for what needs to be done. So that was the first chapter. Look at the very last chapter, the closing part of Nehemiah. He organizes and plans and communicates and rebukes and purifies. And in the last sentence of the book, what does he do? He prays. All throughout the book, you see that action paired with prayer. When he and his workers were threatened and ridiculed by Sanballat and other neighboring leaders, he prayed, "Hear us, O God." And he ordered that his workers who were building the wall have a sword in one hand and a trowel in the other. Okay, it's a plastic putty knife, but you get the point. So he wanted them to be prepared to do the work, but also defend themselves. He didn't just pray about it. But all the while, the law was still being followed, and that's why I have these tassels on, because the Jewish law required that Jewish males have tassels on their clothes to remind them of the law and their dedication to God. So yes, pray, and build, and be ready to defend yourself. And Nehemiah was a good enough administrator and manager to coordinate all of those. When he found out that the Jews were being crushed by debts and taxes imposed by fellow Jews, he prayed and then confronted the people who were charging that usury, that ridiculous interest. He prayed for justice and then he advocated for it from those in charge. He prayed for a rededication to the law, and then he delegated and had the priest Ezra read the law and teach from it. He prayed for protection and then set up that system of shifts for guards to be around the wall and gatekeepers. He prayed that families would be reinstated and restored, and then he set up a whole system for registering the families and rebuilding homes so they had some place to come back to. So yes, pray, but don't stop there. Follow the prayer with action. Work to get yourself in a position where you can take action on behalf of others. Lead, negotiate, plan, communicate, advocate, administrate, delegate like Nehemiah. So what could we do to follow Nehemiah's example of prayer and action? How can we move from sending thoughts and prayers to thoughtful prayerful action? We can brainstorm some ideas. First, get involved in local decision-making bodies. I know politics is a dirty word. It doesn't have to be. Politics is decision-making, and it's local decisions that affect you most. Here are some examples. In this area, several years ago, it was either 2011 or 2015, there was a contract dispute in Round Lake Beach, and it led to a strike that lasted for 5 weeks. Extremely disruptive to the community and to the school. What ended it? It wasn't just thoughts and prayers. It was people showing up at the board meetings and advocating and saying, hey, we're voters and we're paying attention to this. Board, do your job. It was the action, and eventually that strike was resolved. The taxing bodies in Zion are about to receive $14 million a year for 22 years for a total of about $308 million through a state grant program, thanks to Illinois State Representative Joyce Mason, called CEJA. This is to compensate for the closure of the power plant, which used to provide $15 million a year in taxes, which meant that the people in the businesses didn't have to pay all that much in taxes. When the power plant closed and took all of its tax money with it, everybody's taxes rose astronomically. People lost their homes, people lost their businesses. Even those who could afford it, why should I stay here and pay $6,000 a year in taxes when I can move 10 miles down the road and pay half that? And a lot of the economic problems and social problems that we have in the Zion area at the heart of it is the economic devastation that came from the power plant. And now we have nuclear waste on that pristine lakefront property that should be making us bank, as my students say, but we can't use it because we have billions of tons of nuclear waste. So go to board meetings and ask, or at least listen, what are they going to do with this money? Taxing bodies are going to split up that $14 million a year. Is that going to go to line some politicians' pockets? The idea was it should go to tax abatement to help lower the taxes, and it should go toward infrastructure and things like that. But you, as the voters, you need to know. So go to the board meetings and listen, and better yet, ask. If the same few people show up to board meetings and make comments or ask questions, they're easy to dismiss. Oh man, here comes this person again complaining. But if dozens of people, many people come and start asking, then the bodies of government will pay attention because they know the voters are paying attention. But it can't just be the few. It has to be many people. So you can go online and find out when your school board, township board, city council, park district, library board meets and get interested. You don't have to run. If you want to, do it. But at least show an interest. Show up. Listen. Pay attention. Ask questions. Invite other people to go with you. This is something I've learned about the privilege that I carry. Privilege is a much maligned word, but again, it doesn't have to be. I'll give you a silly example. It just means advantages, and things are sometimes a little bit easier for some people than for others. So here's my silly example. I play a lot of basketball, and the guy I play with, his name's Jerry. He's 6'6". I am not. And so when he goes on the basketball court, everybody notices and everybody wants to pick him up on the team. I go on the basketball court by myself. I said, "Sir, are you lost?" So I don't have the same kind of credibility that he has. So it's not that people are mean to me when I play without him. I just don't feel comfortable. When he invites me and we go together, I feel so much more confident and comfortable, and I usually play well. So he has that kind of credibility. It's a little easier, it's a little bit safer for him, and he invites me, and that encourages me to go. Well, what I've come to realize is that there are some people that don't feel like they're going to be heard. They don't feel safe. They don't feel comfortable going into places and positions of power and approaching people in power. So if you're one of those that do feel safe, yeah, it's a board meeting. It's open to everybody. Invite somebody who doesn't feel that way. You could be opening up doors and access to power that could change lives in ways that you don't fully know. So invite people. I know it shouldn't be that way, but it is. Know how to contact your state and local representatives. You could just Google it. There are ways to contact them via email. You can call. You could be old-fashioned and send a fax, or even more old-fashioned and write a letter. They also have online witness slips where you can say, hey, this is the legislation that you're considering, and I am witnessing that I support it or I oppose it. Again, if only a few people do this, it's really not going to make a difference. But if more people do it, they'll know that people are paying attention. I always tell my students, Congress could do something about the astronomical cost of college, but why should they? Polls indicate that no more than 30% of young people 18 to 22 vote. Why should Congress do anything for them if they don't show up to vote? They aren't scared by them. You can't make them do anything. So let's be honest, an election is not going to come down to one vote. So it's not that your vote matters like you are going to turn the tide of the election, but your vote matters in terms of people like you. So if young people want Congress to pay attention to them, they have to vote, because otherwise, I'm sorry, you don't scare me. You can't do anything to me with only 30% of you voting. I'm not going to do anything for you. I'm going to do something for the people who are showing up to vote. So whatever categories you belong to, retirees or people of color, women, what dare I say, Christians, if you want the politicians to do something for you, you have to show up to vote. And again, this is not necessarily taking sides in politics. A lot of people say that I don't want to get political. Well, to not vote is a vote for the other side. I'm a history teacher. Think about how many things have changed. The civil rights movement, that wasn't just thoughts and prayers. That was people showing up to vote and showing the government, yeah, we mean this. It has to be more than thoughts and prayers, and you do have to be a little bit political, because if you are not political, the people on the other side are. And I'm not sure I trust them and their values, but I trust us and our values. So let's bring it a little bit more local. You can also volunteer. If you Google volunteer near me or how to find volunteer opportunities, you'll find it a whole bunch. You can connect with local organizations, Exchange, Kiwanis, Lions, VFW, American Legion, JC's, Habitat for Humanity, Salvation Army, the Northern Illinois Food Bank. If you want to give, there's a great website called Charity Navigator that will break down how the organizations use the money, because you don't want your money to go toward the CEO. You want your money to go toward whatever you're donating for. So charitynavigator.org is a really good website to use if part of your action is giving. I'm working on compiling a slideshow of local organizations that need members and volunteers, and when it's done, I'll ask that the church put it on their website and Facebook page, but that's a really good a resource that you could use to get involved. Think about what has helped or would help you when you need it. If I lost my wife or she lost me, as much as I would appreciate thoughts and prayers, I'm going to need some things. I'm going to need help with babysitting, meal prep, transportation help, appointments, cleaning, the never-ending laundry, someone to talk to, a night out. I mean, I'm not going to go to a restaurant by myself. So I need those kind of things. A friend told me a story, and I remember talking to him when his dad died. When his dad died, he saw some things that his mom needed, and he learned that loss comes with secondary loss. So not only do you lose the person, you lose the things that the person brought, and you grieve for the lifestyle that you had, the person to talk to, and a big one that he and I didn't realize, confidence. And so he told me, all the decisions are now mom's alone. Dad used to make a lot of the decisions, and yeah, they would do it together, but now it's all on her. And that's scary. That's exhausting. It's a mental load that I take for granted because I have my wife helping me with the decisions. Dad was a handyman, and he took care of a lot of stuff. She doesn't know how to do that. Even the little things, bugs. All of a sudden, there were bugs. She didn't know what he had arranged with the exterminator. And it's a little thing, it's a dumb thing, but it's just those things pile up. And she doesn't know what she doesn't know. And my friend was telling me this. He told me a story that one time she wanted him to come over and change the batteries in the remote. And at first he was annoyed, like, you need help with that? Come on. And then when he was doing it, she started crying. And he realized it's not about the remote. It's not about the batteries. It's about all of this falls on her. She doesn't have anybody else, all the stuff that he used to take care of. Even driving, she started asking for directions for places she had been many, many times. And it's not that she didn't know. It's just that, when I'm driving, I have my wife. Hey, slow down, Speedy. The speed limit's 45 here. Or, turn's coming up. I have somebody who kind of shares the load. She doesn't anymore. And so he realized that it's not so much about the little things that have to be done. It's about those things piling up and everything being part of her mental load alone. So what could he do for her? And I helped him brainstorm. Maybe more little things. Maybe more patience when she does ask for help. Maybe more offering help, visiting more, making some meals, inviting her over, checking the light bulbs or the remote batteries when he's over, offering to drive or ride with her. Some of those things that could just take a little bit off of her plate. It's not just about death. It's also disability, sickness, divorce, military deployment. All of those situations leave somebody all of a sudden with all of the load on themselves. And again, yes, send thoughts and prayers. We need that. But there's also a lot of little things that you can think about that you share with somebody that you could help take off their plate. So move from thoughts and prayers to thoughtful actions. Call, text, visit, invite, help, shop. Keep doing it. It's kind of part of our culture to deny a request. Hey, do you need help? Oh, no, I'm fine. Keep asking. It might take 13, 14 requests, but keep asking. So the challenge here is to link prayer and action. Don't act blindly without thought and prayer, but don't just send thoughts and prayers. Do something. Help with those little things that aren't as little as we think. Use your connections, wisdom, and skills to help create systems that can make lasting change, especially for those who may not have the access to power that we have. And as we call and pray for revival, let us consider what we can do to make revival happen. Revive is a verb, to live again. So let us act like we're alive. What does a revived person do? Think about the examples in the book, in the book, the good book, the holy book, the Bible, about what revived people did. Peter's mother-in-law healed and immediately got up and served her guest. Lazarus, what was the command? Come forth. Jesus himself, he didn't ascend to heaven right away. He appeared to many people, encouraging and breathing the Holy Spirit. We are the embodiment of the kingdom of God. In the Old Testament, it used to be an actual kingdom that you would advance by fighting. Now it's in us, and we advance it by living according to the Spirit. So when we pray, let your kingdom come, your will be done, it's not just let it happen, let's make it happen, moving beyond just thoughts and prayers to a prayerful, thoughtful action. In closing, we should consider the covenant prayer in the Wesleyan tradition. I am no longer my own, but yours. Put me to what you will. Place me with whom you will. Put me to doing. Put me to suffering. Let me be put to work for you or set aside for you. Praised for you or criticized for you. Let me be full. Let me be empty. Let me have all things. Let me have nothing. I freely and fully surrender all things to your glory and service. And now, O wonderful and holy God, creator, redeemer, and sustainer, you are mine and I am yours. So be it. And the covenant with which I have made on earth, let it also be made in heaven. Amen. Thank you for the honor of speaking and encouraging that link of prayer and action.